known as Anne Boleyn. In this, the first episode titled State of Christendom, we will look at the rulers on the continent of Europe at the turn of the 16th century and examine the balance of power and geography, all of which set the stage for one of the most dramatic episodes in the history of England. We will familiarise ourselves with the dynastic ambitions of Catherine of Aragon's Trastamara family, the enormous territories of the Habsburgs of Austria and Germany, the domineering Valois of France, and the hitherto ambitious Tudors of England, and of course the vast spiritual and temporal authority of the papacy. In amongst all the dynastic grandeur, there was one man, a commoner, a layman, who rose to incredible heights, drawn by an insatiable desire for power. The power that he craved had been created over centuries. This man was Thomas Wolsey, and the power that he craved was that of the papacy, the papal office. He wanted to be pope, and it was that insatiable lust for authority that ultimately led to the overturn of the old medieval order. And so in this series, titled An Old Tale of Wives, let us begin to understand the course of events. This image represents an overview of the rulers of Christendom in the late 1400s and the early 1500s. We should maybe start with some of the more familiar names and faces. Here, England is ruled under Henry VII. Henry had two sons, the eldest, Arthur, Prince of Wales. Arthur, however, died in 1502, aged just 15. His second son was Prince Henry, and after Arthur's death, Henry became heir to the throne. If we were then to travel south in Christendom, overseas, here in Spain, was its ruler, King Ferdinand of Aragon. Away to the east, over the Alps, way over on the other side of the continent, in Austria, was Maximilian I, the Holy Roman Emperor and the reigning head of the mighty Habsburg dynasty. As Holy Roman Emperor, Maximilian ruled over Austria, the German states and the Low Countries, the area we know today as the Netherlands and Belgium. The Low Countries were governed on the Emperor's behalf by his son and heir, Philip, Duke of Burgundy. Now let's go back to Ferdinand in Spain and meet his offspring. The king and his queen, Isabella of Castile, had two daughters. They actually had several children, a number of which died in infancy. But it's the daughters that concern us now, and they were Joanna of Castile and Catherine of Aragon. Ferdinand was a shrewd sort of chap, and he had the elder sister, Joanna, married Duke Philip of Burgundy. Catherine, of course, was married initially to Prince Arthur. He died, as we know, and Catherine was left high and dry in England for about 7 years until after the death of Henry VII. She then married the youthful new king, Henry VIII. For Henry to marry Arthur's widow, a papal dispensation was granted, the legality of which caused some disquiet later in the reign of Henry VIII. Now, as you can see, in the middle of all this was France, and France looked rather lonely, as it was, because the kingdom was now surrounded by unions in matrimony, political marriages arranged by three rulers, Maximilian, Ferdinand, and Henry VII. They were, all of them, hostile towards France. Now you can probably see where this was all going, because if Philip and Joanna were to produce a male heir, that heir would, in time, unify Ferdinand's kingdom with Maximilian's empire. Added to that formidable power, there was also the influential dynastic union with the Tudors of England through Henry and Catherine. Henry and Catherine, as we know, had a daughter, Mary, in 1516. However, in 1500, Joanna and Philip did have a son, Charles. But then, just 6 years later, the Habsburgs suffered a cruel twist of fate. Philip, Charles's father, died. He was just 28 years old.